Hello and welcome to the Level 3 Certificate in Community Interpreting Preparation course Introduction. It's the aim of this introduction to give you an outline of what's going to be covered in the preparation course itself. It's a wholly online course, of course, which you can study at any time that's convenient to you, anywhere, as long as you've got an internet connection. And you can also go through in your own pace. So if you want to go through more quickly, you can look at the recordings, you can complete the activities. If you want to work through more slowly, that's fine as well. So in the introduction, we will cover the course structure. We will also cover the content, and we'll tell you a little bit of information about what we think you need to know before embarking onto the course. So the course structure, first of all, is made up of 7 different units, and it covers the different aspects of knowledge and skills that you need to be a paid interpreter for different areas. So we try and cover everything you'll need to know, really, to be able to prepare for interpreting, to be able to perform the role as a professional interpreter correctly, and also the kind of skills that you should be using to provide interpreting services. And these are the skills that not only will you use when you're a paid interpreter, but also if you take the exam with LearnQual as well, then you will need to exhibit those skills and that knowledge as part of the exam. So Level 3 is good for interpreting for these different subjects: health, mental health, education, housing, benefits, social services, some immigration. Now, the reason we say some immigration is because at level 3, there are only specific jobs that you can do in immigration. It can be quite tough to get into immigration because they tend to like to work with the same people. And like I say, not all the jobs that immigration have for interpreters are available for level 3 interpreters. Because some of the work involves going to court and dealing with law, those particular jobs are only available for level 6 interpreters. In the same case, there is some law workers available as well at level 3, but again, because it's courts, because sometimes there are different skills that are required at that level, you can't do all law jobs at level 3. However, I do know a lot of interpreters who are getting regular work for law. Now, in particular, health and benefits are highlighted, and that's what the course really focuses on. Health more than any of the others, although it does look at both specialisms. The reasons for that are because health and benefits are probably 2 of the most popular sources of work, or the most common sources of work for most level 3 interpreters. Health, I believe, is still the largest employer of level 3 interpreters. There's a lot of health work available in the UK every single day. Benefits is another very popular one, but other ones that are popular would include mental health itself, housing, and social services. So although we focus completely on health and benefits during the course, and particularly with the onus on health because it is the most common and also because that's what our exam will be based on, we also give you advice of how you can research and increase your skills and your knowledge in the other specialisms as well. Because as a level 3 interpreter, you'll probably want to work in, and you'll be able to work in, all of those different specialisms. So the webinar structure. In each webinar, we cover background knowledge. We have exercises to help you to turn that knowledge into skill. So we can give you as much knowledge as you like over the webinar, and we cram every 2-hour webinar with a lot of information. But the problem with that is it's good from a knowledge point of view, but interpreting is very much a practical occupation. You know, you're not going to be doing an interpreting job and being quizzed on your knowledge about an interpreter. What you will need to do is actually demonstrate your abilities as an interpreter, and that's why it's important to turn the knowledge that we provide to skills. So we have lots of useful and practical activities as you go through so that you can actually build the skills that you'll need to be an interpreter. At the end of each webinar, we have some homework assignments, and again, like the exercises, those are designed to help you to build on the knowledge that we've imparted in the webinar and turn those into skills so that you can pass your exam and have a successful career. And there's also some Q&A as well, so you're an opportunity to ask any questions that you like, either about the exam, about interpreting as a whole, about our assessors or our tutors. Just really some time for you to be able to talk about what's important to yourself before you move on to the next webinar. In terms of a qualification, completing the course isn't a qualification in its own right. So there's nothing in the course that will actually count toward your accreditation or your qualification apart from the knowledge and skill that you will need to pass your exam. So at the end of the course, to get the actual qualification and to actually be able to use that to get paid interpreting work, you would need to complete the practical assessment or the exam. So what's the point of the course then? Well, the course aims to give you the knowledge that you need to pass your assessment at the end there. So as well as teaching you how to be a paid interpreter and have a successful career, which we do talk about a lot, and we do try and tailor the course as we go through to really highlight what you'll need to know and to understand to be able to pass your assessment first time, which is what we want every student at LearnQual to do. So let's have a look at the different units and what we cover in each. Unit 1 is working as an interpreter in public services. So you'll need to understand public services in your area. And that includes, of course, public services in your area. So what are they? What's available? What's around there? We'll look at what services offer in your area. So those public services we've just spoken about, what kind of services do they provide to people who use them? Who are the services available to? So are there any restrictions, particularly for people who have got limited ability in English? We then look at public service terminology, and that includes something which you will need to do and need to cultivate all the way through your career as an interpreter, which is creating a glossary. We'll also get you started, and we'll send out to you some example glossaries to give you a starting point with that as well. We'll talk about terminology from a range of public services in English, so what you can use to build up that glossary. And as I say, the glossary is something you will continue to build throughout your career as an interpreter, and you'll continue to tweak it. It has to be right for you. You can actually buy glossaries online if you want to that have already got interpretations or translations in them. However, the problem with just buying a glossary is that you don't actually go through the process of learning about those words and thinking about how they might be used and actually learning the interpretations yourself. So it can be counterproductive by doing that. We'll have a look at translating terms into your other language. So how do you take the English terms in a glossary and translate them? And then adding explanations to your glossary as well. So all glossaries are useful, but they're even more useful if they've got explanations and context so that you can understand them. Not just when you're originally looking into those particular words, but also so that you can use them afterwards when you need to refresh yourself or your memory before going to an interpreting assignment or before your exam, for example. So that's Unit 1. Unit 2 is preparing for interpreting assignments. So in that, we cover the protocols of interpreter assignment booking. So what happens when you receive a booking from an interpreting agency or a client or a language service provider? So we'll look at the process used by local interpreting services when they book interpreters. We'll also look at the key information that an interpreter should be given at the booking stage, and that also has a relevance to the information that you'll be given before you take your exam. So you'll know what kind of information you'll get beforehand and how you can use that information to prepare. We also cover public liability insurance and CRB requirements for interpreters, both of which are necessary for professional interpreters if you want to get paid for interpreting services. There's also make a professional judgment about accepting or declining an interpreting assignment, and that would include evaluating your own interpreting skills and comparing them to the assignment itself. Using the code of practice to inform accept or decline decisions, and we look at the code of practice itself and what's involved there and how that would have an impact on whether you accept an assignment. We'd look at identifying relevant information in preparation for an assignment, and that would include giving examples of information required. So in that case, what kind of information would you use if you're preparing for an assignment? Because there's a lot out there. And finally, preparing for a range of interpreting assignments, which includes identifying a range of assignments. So how do you know what type of assignment you've got and how do you know what kind of preparation is required for that specific assignment? Unit 3 is planning to work as a community interpreter in medical settings. And that includes types of interpreting assignments within the health service. So I've already mentioned that health is one of the biggest or the most common interpreting assignment for level 3 interpreters. So what types of interpreting assignments would you get within the health service itself? That would include analysing the subject matter of assignments within the health service. So it helps you to prepare for those particular assignments by analysing the subject matter from the information you've got. Anticipating difficulties and terminology that may arise in an assignment. So again, it's part of your preparation. You'd want to understand what difficulties you might run into as an interpreter, and also the kind of terminology that we use. And we talk about a lot all the way through the course about the kind of terminology that is important for an interpreter. It also includes selecting and using appropriate sources to prepare for an interpreting assignment within the health service, which includes identifying a range of sources for researching and interpreting assignment. So again, where are you going to look? If you've got to research ahead of an assignment or ahead of the exam itself, there's a lot of information out there. So we talk about how you can find the right ones and the best ones. How to find the relevant information in the source material. So once you've actually found a relevant source, how do you find the relevant information that's going to help you? We look at understanding specialist terminology used in the health service. So that would include identifying specialist terminology. So what level of terminology will you need? Where will you find that? How will you know the kind of things that you will need to interpret in an assignment? And also your health glossary. So we'll continue to build on that glossary from Unit 2, and we'll give you even more information about how you can build that out so that it's useful for you, not just for the exam, but also in your career. Unit 4 is very similar to Unit 3 because it's planning to work as a community interpreter in the welfare benefits system. So actually, I'm not going to go through all of these in details because the actual points underneath it are exactly the same. But the difference is, of course, that we will be talking all the time in Unit 4 about the welfare benefits system instead of the health system. You do think by looking at that it's exactly the same. But there are actually quite a lot of differences because of that different specialism. And of course, once you've gone through Unit 3 and 4 and you've understood how you can prepare for interpreting in these different specialisms, that's the kind of knowledge that you can take forward to learn about the other specialisms as well. Unit 5 is Interpret Two-Way. So this is a really important one, both for the exam and for interpreting as a whole, because it really zeroes in on all the different skills that you would need to exhibit as an interpreter when you're performing the main role that an interpreter performs, which is interpreting a conversation between two languages. So of course, we talk about how to interpret between two languages, and that would include using appropriate interpreting techniques, explaining the stages of the interpreting process, consecutively interpreting, so that's the skill that a level 3 interpreter will use more often than any other. How to interpret the meaning of a conversation accurately, which is really important. Reflecting the register and attitude, so we talk about what that is and what it means for an interpreter. How you would support effective communication, which is essentially what the interpreter's role is. That's why you're there, to support a communication between two people who wouldn't normally be able to communicate. Using effective note-taking techniques, how to paraphrase and what that is, when, where, and how you would clarify, how to repair mistakes and what the importance of that is, avoiding additions and omissions, so not adding to the conversation or the meaning and not missing things out that are crucial. And then we'd also look at how to provide a professional service, which would include the protocols of specific public services and how you would learn about them. The interpreter's opening statement, so this is really important for interpreters at the beginning of every interpreting assignment, and it's a way that you will make things easier for yourself really when you're providing interpreting. And the interpreting code of practice, so we look at in more depth at the code of practice and what it means and how you can use it to protect yourself. So Unit 5, because it's such a big unit, actually goes over 2 different webinars. So we look at half of that in one of the webinars, webinar number 5, and then half of it in webinar number 6. Unit 6 is Perform a Site Translation, and that would include understanding how to carry out a site translation. So it's a bit similar to the last unit really, in that we look at how you would actually provide this service to your clients. So the process of site translation, what does that look like? Scenarios which involve site translation. So when would you need to provide a site translation? It's certainly not as common as providing a consecutive interpreting, which is more or less exactly what you'll do every single appointment that you're involved in. But some appointments also have a capacity for site translation, so we talk about that as well. We look at site translation text examples. So what kind of things would you be expected to interpret? And then we look at site translation techniques. So similar to Unit 5, we're looking at the different techniques you'd be expected to exhibit as an interpreter and also in your exam. And that includes using appropriate language and register, terminology and concepts, reflecting the register language and tone, fluency and confidence, strategies to deal with challenging language, how to paraphrase the meaning of complex terms and phrases, how to again clarify any uncertainty that you might have, and how to use and what kind of reference materials are relevant and allowed in a site translation as well. The final unit is all about continual professional development for interpreters. So of course, by doing this preparation course, that is a form of continual professional development. But training courses aren't the only thing that you can do to work and to develop as part of your CPD. So we'll look at, first of all, your level of competence. It's difficult for anyone to develop their skills and knowledge unless they have an understanding of where they are in the first place. We look about the effectiveness of your performance in assignments and how you can reflect on that and how you can evaluate it. Your assignment management, so how do you actually manage the assignments that you're part of? What kind of things you can do to review your progress regularly, which should be a part of every interpreter. In fact, every professional should review their progress regularly and work on improving their weaknesses. So we look at the importance of continual professional development as well, and how you would create a CPD plan, including future training needs, CPD opportunities, and how these can be accessed. So that brings us to the end of the different topics. I don't know whether it will sound like a lot or not too much there, but certainly the feedback from students who have been on our courses say there's a lot of information in there, and we do our best really to cover everything that you might need, particularly for obviously passing that exam, but also so that you can be a successful professional interpreter afterwards. In terms of the course length, generally each webinar will last between 1 and 2 hours, depending on how many questions you've got and how much information we give, then that tends to be toward the 2-hour mark. After the webinars are completed, we also make sure that webinar recordings are available so that you can catch up on anything you might have missed, or also so that you could review it again. Because there's so much information sometimes in some of these webinars, it's useful to be able to go back and refresh your memory, and that's one of the advantages of recordings, is it's really easy to just sit down and watch them. You're expected to conduct your own research and complete assignments. So the way that we've structured this, as I say before, the actual course itself isn't a qualification. And what that means is that you don't have to write essays, you don't have to complete any particular tasks during the course, but we do suggest them to you. So they're all completely voluntary. Like I say, we would recommend that you complete as many as possible and spend time over those, because that's what will help you to be a better interpreter, and it will help you to pass your exam. But it is completely up to yourself. As I've already explained, conducting your own research and completing the assignments will help you to prepare really for the realities of the job as an interpreter. We could give you lots of information, of course, or you could buy a lot of information, of course, but that won't really help you to develop the skills and knowledge that you really need to be successful. Because at the end of the day, when you're in that interpreting assignment, there'll only be really you that you can rely on, and there's only you that can understand both parties and can provide that interpreting. So it is quite a solitary role, and therefore we help you to prepare for that by making it quite realistic as you're preparing as well. Over the whole length of the course, I mean, I've mentioned the 2 hours per webinar, so if you've got 7 of those, obviously that's 14 hours already. But you'll normally be expected to be able to really get to grips with the skill and the knowledge that you'll need to be successful. You'd need to aim to spend about 60 to 85 hours of work. So that's up to you how you spend it. That can include voluntary interpreting assignments, of course, and it also includes the time that you would spend revising for your practical assessment. So again, 60 to 85 hours might sound like a lot, but trust me, if you take part, if you do all the homework activities we've got for you, if you revise properly for your exam, those 60 to 85 hours will absolutely fly by. So that concludes the introduction to the Level 3 preparation course. I hope you've enjoyed that. I hope it's been clear for you, and we'll see you in the course itself. Thank you.